Great idea, folks. But let's talk about bonding, and let's talk about the financial requirements to do a project. And I was like, bonding? What the hell is that?
You had made the commitment at that point.
I was Cortez. I burned the boats.
I think that's a very important distinction for people to hear, right? Because if you don't burn the boats,
You'll never do it because life is just not that easy. But at the end of the day, you got to make the jump. Let me tell you, the U.S. Chamber was a very, very good job. I tell folks, I went from working in the bowels of the Pentagon, where some changes made to the law, and the technology was having trouble keeping up with it and being able to implement the changes. So we came in with Accenture to help implement those, fix those, and that led to a 10-year managed service contract.
so why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, your first and last name, and the name of your company?
Sure. Rob Schroeder. I'm the founder here at SteerBridge. We're a federal contracting company focused on data and technology professional services for our federal government.
Okay, nice, nice. All right, now we can go backwards and we can work backwards and talk about the lettering on the wall. And so what was that? What was that process like?
So the ordering of it was actually fairly easy. That's the easy part. Then the hard part became actually installing it. And so we quickly realized that was not a job for us. That would be outsourcing said professionals to come in because each letter is individually placed. So it's not just got to be on a straight level, but the spacing between each one, we had a couple tries at it. And
Okay.
so but we're very happy with it now.
All right. I like it. I like it. And you said that you listened to me early on when you were getting started.
Yes, Eric. So first off, thanks for having me on here today. This is, I don't want to say coming full circle, but this is a cool opportunity for me to be able to do this with you today because I did start my government contracting experience with you in my ear.
Nice.
I
Nice.
say in my ear because I used to, so it was during COVID when I kind of got started really.
Okay.
And I was listened to your podcast while I was running.
Oh,
And so
nice.
it's a great opportunity for me to I'd go on my long runs and listen to you. And just want to thank you for all the great lessons. Some of those were hard lessons that you learned along the way, some battle scars, but I really appreciated the experience that I got to learn from you as I launched SteerBridge here.
No, no. I thank you for that. And I wish I did not have to go through those lessons.
Well, I'm creating my own lessons to go through. So these are not, it's not lesson free, but at least I did not repeat lessons.
There you go. Now, do you I know that you were introduced to me through Caesar Nadar. So I take it you identify with his story, being a fellow Marine.
Yes. And so Caesar, though, is one of those kind of like yourself. You really, really pride yourself and feed off of helping other people.
Right.
And Caesar's that type. And so he was really instrumental in helping me as I did my first transition from the Marine Corps back in 2013,
Hmm.
and then ultimately when I launched SteerBridge in 2018. So he's helped me along the way repeatedly, continuously, and very if you know Caesar, he doesn't do anything that's not forceful and with a complete vigor. So
That's very
he
true.
he has taken me on as a project.
It's fascinating for me is Caesar, he spoke at my conference last year and we released some of his interviews. Again, they were, 4 years old, but it like reignited people's interest in him and reaching out to him. And so he was responding to everyone's emails. And I
Yeah.
said, Caesar, how I can't respond to everyone's emails. I go, how are you running an organization, a company, and at the same time respond to emails? And I can count probably 4 or 5 people that I know of who I have a relationship with who also said Caesar has helped them tremendously. So uh, I don't know how he finds time to do all of this, but like you said, he's managed to do it, and he says he feels a sense of uh, pride in doing that. And like myself, yes, I do get tremendous joy out of it. But I mean, he's responded to every single email. At least, Rob, I had to get away from the emails about 4 years ago.
I can imagine.
I had to get away from the emails 4 years ago.
Well, but you also know though that you're making an impact, and that's the challenge for you is how do you scale that impact? And I think
Right.
that's probably a point of frustration for you that when you start operating at scale, it's hard to scale advice. It's hard to scale that personal interaction, the personal ability to positively influence people.
Right, right. Were there any other interviews that you found that you can remember distinctly? Anyone else?
Gosh, there were just a lot of them, and a lot of them though, Eric, were just you talking. So if you recall in the beginning, you were just on the mic talking.
Right, right, right.
And uh, I remember, so I now have one of the companies, we have a JV that's in the construction and facilities management space.
Mm,
And I remember, like a lot of probably military people, I was like, well, I could get into construction. I could do this and I could do that. And this would be
right,
great. And you were like, great idea, folks. But let's talk about bonding.
right,
And let's talk about the financial requirements that it to do a project. And I was like, bonding, what the hell is that?
right,
And so, I mean, right off the bat, I had this idea, I had this vision. I was going to do X, Y, and Z, and I knew the people. And then you're like, let me introduce you to bonding.
right.
And that was just one of the many. And we talked about capital requirements. And what I liked about your series was not that you didn't talk about cap tables from a Wall Street perspective or a
Right.
PE perspective. You're like talking about it from a real world, like you have no money, Rob. How are you starting your business? And walking through a lot of the intangibles, walking through the SBA, goods, bads, others, walking through really the nuts and bolts and kind of why it resonated with me so much. I'm like, listen, the strategy is great, but I can't have a strategy if I don't have anything to strategize. And
Mm,
so I got to get this thing going. And I like the fact that you provide a lot of guidance, assistance to the masses, if you will, but on that blocking and tackling to get yourself started. And that GovCon does not have to be this mythical beast or giant, but it is a very lucrative one. It's one that you can also do. And one thing that I found, Eric, in addition to the components that you talk about is that for a lot of the military people, you can actually have an outsized influence upon the mission of the United States and whatever that mission is and wherever you come from
absolutely.
this. Mhm.
I can we and we'll come back, but I definitely would like to have that conversation because I personally did not serve, but I interview a lot of veterans, and I would love for you to continue to stay along that path and encourage them because I feel like this is another way they can continue to serve outside of uniform.
I would agree with you 100%. And
So
that is, go ahead.
no, no, and so that's what I want to just make sure. I want to kind of stick with that theme today as you share your story, your journey, right? Because there are other veterans out here listening, and maybe they're discouraged, maybe they I always feel like maybe like it's a funny story really quickly. I was getting my dry cleaner this morning, and the lady who owns the dry cleaning business, she's a really tough lady. She's been in business for like 30 years and she's like 70 now. And she's but I mean 70 is young nowadays, but again, she said that when she was little, she was big for her age, and they always told her she had big feet, so she felt bad about having big feet. And then one professor or teacher said to her that that your feet are appropriate for your height, right? Because you're tall. And so that one word of encouragement changed the way she perceived herself moving forward. So I think what a lot of the people that we're speaking to are right on this public platform, I want to be mindful of that as we're moving, is that everything that we say, doesn't necessarily matter to everyone, but some things we say do matter to a lot of people. And so I want to keep that in mind. And let's have that theme for how do we encourage other veterans, that people that uniform or leaving uniform, how they can serve in a different capacity. Because I frankly operate in the premise that we need to grow our industrial base to support the warfighter. And so that's the premise from which I operate.
Well, and along those same lines, Eric, I operate from a premise. I had the good fortune of going to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce once I left the Marine Corps, my first transition job. I quickly realized how powerful a tool, a weapon, entity, if you will, the American economy, American free enterprise actually is.
Mm,
And its influence upon the world and global affairs far outpaces what the US military does because it's part of life in every climate and place, if you will. The military is critically important, obviously, and we like to think that we do have the most powerful military on earth as well, but you never want to use it. You
right.
know, it's break glass when needed, but the American economy, you want to use that every day, every single day, and it's a force for good. And so I was able to do that and see that at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And my job as the deputy for international was to help American businesses grow overseas. And so we felt very strongly about growing that industrial base, but really growing the industrial complex for national security and everything else. And because all these industries are all intertwined as well. And what I saw was my ability to learn and understand what that sector was like. And now with SteerBridge, being able to apply those lessons learned and then be able to bring in those capabilities because my world view of free enterprise was widely expanded and those capabilities could be brought to bear on behalf of our national security. So I was given a great opportunity, and now I'm trying to leverage that for the betterment of the mission, if you will.
No, that's great. So tell me, you said you started during COVID.
Yes, but that was great. It was a blessing for me because I could do both during that time,
Okay.
and that enabled me to be able to get SteerBridge up and going. And then we just kind of, and of course, whenever you do these third shift entrepreneur deals or side hustles, you got to make sure that your main hustle is okay with it. So I work for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. They're all about growing businesses. So they actually celebrate entrepreneurs. One year they had one of my colleagues, she started a Christmas tree farm.
Okay.
So at Christmas, the chamber did this big celebration, tried to get people out there to buy Christmas trees from her. So the chamber is all about doing stuff like that and promoting businesses. And they did not want to be, detrimental to one of their own. So they allowed me to do it, and I was able to, find some right people to partner with. And I went the route of being a sub
Yep.
on my first contract. And that first contract with Accenture Federal Services, we're still with them today. And so that has proved to be a very fruitful, beneficial relationship and partnership, working at the VA on the GI Bill, which we're very proud of. What we've established ourselves as a good, trustworthy partner and delivering some really good results for both the VA and veterans, which is within that important benefit, which is the GI Bill.
So tell us on the first contract, what was the work? What was the scope of work services?
So we strictly were working to help Accenture. It's an IT problem,
Okay.
with the GI Bill, and it was the implementation of that benefits and the delivery of that benefit. And so there were some changes made to the law, and the technology was having trouble keeping up with it and being able to implement the changes. So we came in with Accenture to help implement those, fix those, and that led to a 10-year managed service contract.
Wow.
That's in the GovCon space, 10 years, that's where you want to be.
No, that's where you want to be. And I have a lot of questions. How do you get a first subcontract with Accenture?
So we worked a lot with, listen, DC is a relationship town.
Yep.
And my business partner was in a meeting, and Accenture was there, and they were looking for something. They needed a trustworthy SDVSB, service disabled, better known small business. And he said, "Hey, I know just the one." And it started off small. We had 10 folks that we were able to recruit and put on it. We proved ourselves to be, a dependable partner. And, the requirement was they had to have STVOSBs. It was a 30% requirement. Does Accenture need SteerBridge to be the secret sauce? No.
Right.
Are they required to have SteerBridge? Yes.
Right.
And so we took advantage of that. And like you've talked about many times, know what the socioeconomic requirements are
Sure.
and fill the need. And so and then we leverage that in order to be able to use that past performance to be able to do additional work.
Love it. I like it. I like it. So, um, how long between when you launched to when you got the first subcontract? What was that time frame?
Oh, I consider we launched on that day. Uh, in fairness, so I actually started SteerBridge in 2011. I was still active duty in the Marine Corps. It was just a single member LLC. I had a brother that needed a little consulting help, and I helped him with that.
Hmm. Okay.
Fast forward, my brother was 6 years younger, is already retired. Let's just say I helped him quite a bit, but he actually went on and did some great stuff, but he needed a little help for a little period. And back in those days, in order for you to do that sort of work, you had to have an LLC.
Okay. Okay. So you founded it in 2011, but you didn't really work the business until COVID time,
2008.
right?
2018, my partner and I got together, and that's one thing I would offer to folks is that partners are, I mean, it's the single most important decision you'll make because it's either going to go extremely well or it's not. And there's stories on both sides of that, but we've had a great partnership over the past 5 years.
So 2018, you're still working at the chamber, and you do, what makes the trigger? Like, what do you decide why now? I mean, you have a single member LLC. I'm sure there's tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people sitting home with a single member LLC that they form that is just sitting there dormant. So why
Yep.
2018?
Well, you do a job for a few years and you're like, man, there's a lot more I could be doing out there. And I was an acquisition professional when I was inside, when I was with the Marine Corps, when I did a tour, uh, headquarters Marine Corps aviation. And so I had an understanding of it. And my neighbor, who was my business partner now, was like, Rob, so he's everything I'm not. Never been in the Marine Corps, never
Okay.
done any service. He's a CPA turned CFO, private equity, all of this sort of stuff.
Mm.
He's like, Rob, I've been very successful in this town. I'm currently retired, and I don't know anybody, but you know everybody in town, and we could probably make some magic together. And so that's been the impetus behind it from getting started. And then once I saw the opportunity, truly, that's when I jumped in with both feet. And but your standard story, I get it all set up just right, Eric, just right. And I'm like, okay, now I can make the jump. I got 4 kids at home, so just keep that in mind.
Okay.
And I feel confident that I can make the jump. We make the jump in January 21. So I'd worked out all my deals with the chamber, and then we promptly lost 2 contracts. 2 of 3 we lost. So that was
painful.
a good start.
Okay.
Good. So
But I can tell you that it's you had made the commitment at that point.
I was Cortez. I burned the boats,
Right.
and we are. Mhm.
I think that's a very important distinction for people to hear, right? Because if you don't burn the boats,
You'll never do it
right.
because life is just not that easy.
No.
And so I feel like I have, quote, cheated the system as much as I could with my business partner because he's done this so many times and been so successful with it. There are a lot of things I can lean directly on him for. But at the end of the day, you got to make the jump. And it's really, let me tell you, the US Chamber was a very, very good job. I tell folks, I went from working in the bowels of the Pentagon. I worked in the on the Joint Staff and the J8, so I'm down in a vault secure facility down in the basement. And I went from there in 2013 to I had my office overlooked the White House.
Mm,
It was a little bit different, and
right.
I got to rub elbows with world leaders from all over the world. And I got to see, do, and play a part of things on a global scale, which was just an incredible opportunity. How did I get that opportunity? Strictly through networking. It's the only way I got the job. Job wasn't advertised or anything. And so there's no real limit to what people can do if the right opportunity presents themselves. And so it was really hard to make that jump, but I knew I had to make the jump. And look, my CEO actually encouraged me because he's like, listen, if you don't do it, you never will do it, and you'll never know if you could succeed. And let me tell you, I have had a ball. I love this. I love this job. I love the role. I love the company. I love the people. I love the mission. And I love what we're able to do.
How did you, when you first recruited those 10 people, what did you do?
I paid recruiters a lot of money. Yep. Because you don't have anything.
You
So
don't
you
have
got
it,
to
right? Yeah, you don't, right.
you hire them all on all the recruiters have different models, but we had to do the most expensive model, which was, you hire them as your employee, and after 3 to 6 months, they roll over. And, but we did what we had to do in order to get it up and running. And oh, by the way, 10 high-end tech people and having to float them for 90 days. These are all the little things that you learn along the way. That 90-day float before you get paid that can get expensive.
With some tech people.
Yes. These are not $10 an hour folks.
Oh, we know. Especially if they're not working on a project that you're working with Accenture on. So,
No, 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 no. And so it worked out well. So, and Accenture was a great partner for us. We were able to do it at the VA where we were passionate about it. We understood the environment, and it really worked out. It was kind of all things came together for us in the right way. And a 10-person project to start off with, and you can't, that's just, it's a good way to start.
how did you learn how to be a leader, right? Because you essentially, I mean, you worked at a company, and now all of a sudden you're the founder. You said you have a CEO, but you're not the
No,
CEO.
I'm the founder and managing partner.
Okay.
So I have a hard time until we grow just a little bit more. I mean, I used to work with CEOs of Fortune 10
Right.
companies. I have a hard time with the title, but we have a planned progression for when we will name me CEO based on the growth of the company and other leadership positions that we'll put in at the time. We'll put a full C-suite in. I've not wanted to do that beforehand.
Okay. Right. So, how did you adopt to being the managing partner and leader of this troop coming out the gate?
I would say that it's something that I enjoy doing, but I learned it. Listen, since 1989, I've been in a leadership laboratory known as the Marine Corps or the Naval Academy. Constant leadership lessons, constant leadership opportunities to learn. But along the way, I also picked up my MBA, which I think gives you a lot of management skills and a lot of management capabilities, as well as how to manage a business, which was hugely helpful. I also, my 8 years at the US Chamber, so you'll appreciate this, Eric, is that my first thing that I got when I retired from the Marine Corps, so I was a squadron commander. I feel like I'm a pretty good leader as a Marine. And the first thing the US Chamber did was say, hey, here are 3 leadership coaches we're going to give you. and they're going to help you. And to first off, that's a little bit of a shot to the ego, but then you realize why. They're like, listen, all we're trying to do is help you understand our environment and our people so that you can become more successful and become a better and more effective manager of people. And so I was the deputy. We had 100 people, and kind of I was the inside COO, and my boss was the outside guy, and just worked extremely well. I learned a ton there. I learned what P&L meant. I learned what what managing people in the private sector, understanding how to manage incentive structures and schedules, and how to and motivations. And so I was able to learn for 8 years plus, being around all these other major corporations and seeing how they operate, seeing different cultures, and seeing different means of conducting business.
What would you recommend for, again, someone starting out that doesn't have that level of management experience?
That's a good question. So,
I mean, you just level, like you just like totally wiped the floor. Like, yeah, I mean, I did managing for 89. So, okay, that just took regular people out the mix.
what I would say though is that it is, but listen, what did I do when I was starting out? I recognized what I don't know. So I grabbed my business partner is a financial genius. Uh, I listen to your podcast. I don't know GovCon from the contractor side. I knew it from the acquisition side, but I didn't know it there. So I started listening to you.
Right.
And so it is that thirst for knowledge. And I think that you look at where you have gaps. And so I didn't think that I had necessarily leadership gaps, but I had management gaps that the
Okay.
MBA helped fill out, coaches helped fill out. But there are all sorts of people that I talk to, either peers. I go to peer group things all the time to understand what challenges people are facing, what they're doing. And people like you are a tremendous resource no matter what level. And I would just say that wherever you are in your journey, there are plenty of people that can help you either personally as mentors or just as resources like GovCon Giants, and just plug it in and start listening and start figuring out what it is that you are capable of doing.
One thing I will say that I appreciate that you did, that I encourage people, is not just listen, but you reached out to the podcast guests,
Mhm.
right? So that's one thing I think a lot of people feel that they can't reach out. And that's why in the beginning of this conversation, I said how we met, because
Mhm.
I encourage the listeners, hey, if you identify with this individual in some capacity, they're generous people. They want to help, right? I found that all of my podcast guests have been tremendously generous, and they will take the time to meet with someone, talk to them, respond to an email, and whatever tidbit of information or knowledge they can impart on you, I think is valuable. So
Well,
I will couldn't say that that's one thing that I saw that you did immediately.
well, I would say, Eric, that part of the reason why I think that is with people that come on as guests is because we know we've been helped.
Mm,
I can fall off the turnip truck and be like, man, I'm a GovCon genius. Here I go.
right.
And we know how often. I mean, I got my job at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce because one person made a phone call. I'd never heard of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And one person made a phone call, changed my life forever. And so I think that we are aware that we need help from others. We're aware that we need to give back. And we're aware of the fact that how we got here is through other people, working with other people, and the generosity of other people with their time, talents, and treasure to be able to get us to where we are.
Can you tell us about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce? Because I'm sure there's other people like yourself who hadn't heard of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. I personally deal with the local Chamber of Commerce, right? But the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, it seems like a whole nother level.
It is. It's one of the largest lobbying shops in DC. About 400 people work right across from the White House, and our job was to, or the chamber's job is to advocate on behalf of American business. And so the chamber does that here in town as well as around the world globally. So working trade, economic issues. They work every issue that touches business. The U.S. Chamber is involved in to be the voice of American business back into the federal government. And so they are a membership dues funded organization that is there to advocate no matter what administration is in the White House or on Capitol Hill. They are working to advocate for the best business practices and rules, regulations from a business standpoint.
It's amazing. That's interesting. I telling you, most of us have dealt with our local chambers. Are the local chambers tied back up to the national or U.S. Chamber of Commerce?
So that's a very good question. And so they are actually dues paying members. They're not required to be, but most of them are members of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And then you have what are called AmChams, American Chambers of Commerce overseas. There are about 112 of those. Those are affiliated with the U.S. Chamber. They have to be accredited by the U.S. Chamber.
And they call it AmSams?
AmCham. So
AmChams. Okay.
AmCham.
Gotcha. Okay, American Chamber. I see it now. I can see it.
So if you're an American business looking to do business overseas in a particular country, like in France, you would contact the AmCham there in Paris, and they would help you. And other American companies would be there as well, and in a forum to be able to advocate on your behalf.
Do you think that's something that you encourage small businesses to participate in the U.S. Chamber of Commerce?
Yes, it just depends on what you need and what you're trying to do. And so for
Okay.
some companies, it's hugely valuable because they need the visibility, they need the advocacy, they need the support. And then other companies, they're just in a different space and a different time. And so everybody's kind of got their own. I participate with them via the Hiring Our Heroes program. And I'm proud to say that we were recognized as the Hiring Our Heroes Small Business of the Year last year for our work in partnership there with the U.S. Chambers Hiring Our Heroes.
I also noticed that you sat on the board of USAA panel 2013, 2016.
Yes, so that was a great opportunity. I've been given a few opportunities that worked out really well for me to understand kind of how businesses operate, challenges that they have, and opportunities and way they evaluate risk. So USAA was my first one.
Uh, I actually, we did a veteran scholarship through Goodwill, and it was funded by USAA.
Very nice. Very nice.
But we would like to continue that program. So anyone you can recommend after the podcast, I'd be happy to welcome.
You should reach Herman Bulls. He's a great American.
Herman.
Bulls.
All right, Herman Bulls. All right. Yeah. Because the program was very successful. We actually have a lot of student success stories that came through that program. 3 or 4 I could take off head. But because it came through Goodwill, it was funded by USAA. They don't know that we actually were the beneficiaries of it, right? And so they don't actually know the veterans who received the beneficiaries. In fact, one of our students today now supports Apex program, but he was trained through us that qualified him to then be an Apex accelerator. But he was a recipient through the USAA scholarship that they provided. So tell me, I see you're on another foundation, your Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation.
So I just rolled off there after 6 years, and I was the finance chairman for the last 3 of that. We provide scholarships to children of Marines. A great organization, a great mission, and I'm proud to have been a part of that and part of their growth over the past few years, where we now give out a little bit over 10 million a year to children of Marines. And it really was a meaningful opportunity for me to be able to get back into the Marine Corps in a meaningful way.
So it looks like most of this, if I'm hearing the same themes, comes from the relationships, from the networks that you develop. And so what types of events are you attending? We made all these wonderful opportunities. I'm sure people listening like, where is he going? I want to be in the room with Rob. So where's Rob heading at these days? What events are you attending?
I think it's a little less of events per se, as opposed to reaching out to people
Okay.
and reaching out to people and then connecting with them in a meaningful way. And I'm either you can look at it either way. I'm either the bad penny that won't go away, or I'm, the friend that never loses touch. But I will literally reach out to folks, either if I know them or don't, and look for a way to connect with them in a meaningful way. And it's not just networking, it's connecting. And those are two very, very different scenarios. And I think that a lot of people confuse those two. Like Caesar Nader, to go back to Caesar, he connects with people emotionally in a very concrete way and tangible ways. And I think that's the secret sauce, is not to quote network to see how many connections I can get on LinkedIn or how many people are in my Rolodex, but to actually really connect with people. And that means, doing some stuff to help, spending some time and energy helping them do something. And that is I think that really is what enables truer, more meaningful connections in a spirited way that is, it's not altruistic. So don't feel like it's a charity, but it's like, hey, listen, I'm going to help you out. And because it's a mutually beneficial relationship, because we're in a similar space, or for whatever reason is driving it, we're both Marines, we're both doing this, we're both Academy grads, whatever it is, come up with a common connection and then go from there. And I think I do fewer events because people, I think you hear this quite a bit. A lot of people are naturally introverted, but they force themselves to be extroverted. And
Mhm.
I'd fall into that camp.
Okay. Okay. What is one thing that was hard when you started business that's still hard today?
Finding the right people.
Okay.
And I think because we all know that businesses thrive and die based on people. And you hire the right person and just get out of their way and watch them just absolutely crush it. If you hire the wrong person, you're going to be spending all your time with that person trying to unscrew a situation or their career or whatnot. So I'd say that will always be the challenge, is being able to find the best means, the best methods, processes to find and hire the right people.
What is something that is easier today than when you first started?
Cash,
Sorry?
cash,
What's that?
no
Oh,
cash,
cash.
money.
Okay. Ah, okay.
We're
Yeah,
not
cash.
we're not starting from zero.
Okay, cash. There you go.
Yes.
All right.
But like on the people side, so one of the things we've done, I mean, we're not a huge company, but I have 4 full-time recruiters on the team. And that is a little bit outsized for where we are, but I never want our recruiters to be stressed to the point of they're just trying to throw resumes into the engine. I want them being able to spend the time to recruit, retain, and bring in the right people. So we overinvest on the recruiting side.
The IT contract that you were awarded, did you have to have a facilities clearance for that? Okay.
We have one now, but we did not, because our work over at DoD, we needed one, but we do not need one for the VA work.
Okay. Okay. What do successful entrepreneurs have to worry about getting into the field, personally, professionally, emotionally? What would you say to people?
There are a lot of differences, but also a lot of similarities. And I would say that the number one thing that folks have to understand as entrepreneurs getting into the space is just the barriers to entry.
Okay.
You you cannot eliminate the barriers. The barriers are the barriers. You have to learn how to navigate through them or around them as best you can. And instead of beating your head up against a wall trying to change the barriers, just figure out the best way to get through them. And understand it's a long sales cycle. You got to build up past performance. But on the flip side, the great part about this business is that once you are in, it is the proverbial beachhead. Once you land and establish a beachhead, you can truly grow a meaningful business that is doing great work and is ever expanding and growing. It's the only sector that I can see that you can do it exactly like that.
Yeah, I concur 100%. That's why I keep trying to encourage more people to come in and be in this space because, like you said, the barriers are high, so it's very intimidating. And so yes, um, but I always tell people if you change your mind, and I said the good thing about having high barriers of entry is you're building a moat when you're inside.
Well,
So
and the thing is, it makes it the GovCon space is ideally suited for the side hustle
mm,
because you can do the side hustle to get something small,
right,
take 9, 12 months
right.
instead of beating your head up against the wall. Just understand it's going to take you a year to get in, to get started. Do that on the side, and then you can build it up from there. And that, I think at least, it makes it very well suited for that, getting yourself started and launched, and then you have a platform from which to go. And so you're not putting your whole life at risk based on one contract or one deal or something that's just inherently going to take a long time. I've talked to a lot of guys and gals that are so frustrated that it's taking them so long. I'm like, well, who told you this was going to go quickly?
That's fair. And what do they say?
They're like, well, I just thought
I
because
thought,
I knew someone, I thought because I knew someone, you know, they told me they wanted me to come to work here and do this. I'm like, well, they're not a contracting officer. So that's just bad advice. And so that, and you know, it's to your point, it's such a good business once you get in. You know, who are the most conservative people in the world in the business on the business side? They're banks.
mm-hmm,
But banks will loan you actually 90% of your monthly AR. Whereas if you're in the private sector, it's about 70%. You know,
right,
and these are rough, but you can
perfect.
see already the banks recognize government always pays. The government contracts are sticky, and you're pretty much good for it.
No, like I said, I agree. I think the challenge becomes, like you said, um, we all want things faster, but then the right, we all want things like we all do, and I've learned that our perception of time is different depending upon what we're doing. So what does that mean? If you're at a red light and the light changed green and someone waits 3 seconds, they want to honk the horn, right? It's only 3 seconds in time. Is that right?
Oh,
But
100%.
if you were putting in a scenario where, I don't know, you're waiting for your elevator to arrive, if it came in 3 seconds, you'd be like, whoa, something, like so it just depends on the scenario where the time, right, we place or we think or expect the time to be faster or shorter based on some preconceived notion. And I remember
Oh,
reading that and I said, that's interesting, right? Because it's like, well, in other scenarios, you'll wait hours. This one, you won't wait seconds, right? Which it's all same time, which, right? And so to your point, people will spend a lot of time in chasing opportunities that will not yield the long-term results that we're talking about here. Um, and instead of investing the time here with an output that we know of, and I continue to show stories like yourself of people who demonstrate where, hey, you can get in this thing and win a 10-year contract and be secured for a long time.
well, to that point, we just had a conversation with some of the team this morning. One of my managing directors was, lamenting the fact that in his space, the contracts are smaller.
Okay.
Other space, the contracts are larger. And he's like, I'm not contributing as much. to that bottom line. I'm like, well, but here's the difference. Yours are smaller in numbers and everything, but they're all 5 years.
Mm.
And so that helps us build our base. So the base is just getting bigger and bigger and bigger with these 5 year contracts. And so some of these bigger ones might just be for 2 years. And so it's great for 2 years. But if I can keep growing that steady base, steady as she goes, I'm like, hey, the turtle wins in this thing 9 times out of 10. And
Mhm.
so we try to do both. We try to go, we are fairly aggressive
Okay.
and audacious and everything else you want to say about, going after big, but we never dismiss the small. So we're still going after, things that are, over 5 years, 5 people, that's a few $1,000,000. And so it's we want to make sure that we do both.
What keeps you up at night?
Oof, nothing.
Nothing.
I, I have never, I'm not a worrier. I'm more of and I've just never have been. I mean, my wife hates it, the fact that I can just, all hell can be breaking loose and boom, I'm out. But if you want to speak pejoratively or metaphorically, what keeps me up at night? What keeps me up at night is ensuring that we are making the right decisions for the company. I take very seriously the fact that 80 families depend on a paycheck from us every 2 weeks. And so we take that responsibility very seriously. And it's our job to continue to push hard for growth, because as a small company, if you're not growing, you're done. And I take that responsibility very seriously to both grow in our opportunities, but also to ensure that everybody on the team is growing professionally and personally as well. So we got to make sure we hit that right balance, as well as push the company in the right directions and make those we got some big strategic decisions to make this year in order for our investments to set the conditions right for 25. And we got to make sure we hit those right.
What are some of the things that you're doing? I know when you said you went over to the U.S. Chamber, they put you with 3 people or persons that could do the leadership training. What are some of the things that you're doing for your team?
So, good question. We're spending some time with our leadership team to do some just deliberate and training with them that's more unofficial, if you will, but putting some time and effort into there. We're also doing something a little bit different with our up and coming managers. I grabbed one of our managing directors. She's a PhD, organizational leadership and management. So this is her wheelhouse. And I said, listen, what I want to do is develop a training program for our new managers. Instead of just telling them to be good, a lot of companies our size will just say, hey, Eric, you go be a good manager. If you're not, I'm going to tell you. I'm going to
Right.
come down. And so what we want to do, we're going to put some formal training around that. A little bit of that will be outsourced. A little bit of that will be insourced in order to give them the tools, the capabilities to actually become good managers and actually function on a day-to-day basis as good managers.
Okay. No, but prior to that, what were you doing? What some of the tools that you used in the past
For myself or for the
for the
team?
team?
Well, at the chamber, I just passed out coaches to everybody. So I had access to a lot of capabilities.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so I do
Okay.
that. And I would say for myself, it is working with, I really enjoy going to peer discussions and in DC here, there are a lot of peer-to-peer opportunities where we sit around the room and really just break bread together, talk about issues, talk about challenges, and try to help each other out with some of those solutions.
Oh, so let's go back to then maybe the chamber because we want to give the people listening some things where they can go and get some resources from.
Let's see here. The chamber is a great resource on the small business side to be able to just give you a ton of resources for ways that you can develop and you can grow. I'd also say I have really found LinkedIn to be a powerful tool for me, at least, to be able to follow certain people
Mm,
and really dig into some of their stuff. And then I think you can never go wrong if you grab any of Jim Collins' works. I'm now rereading some of them.
mhm.
And what's amazing is to reread some of these books that you've read throughout your career, and now they mean so much more to you. And so I never discount the value of reading some of those premier management consulting slash business leading books.
You know what I like about you, Rob, is that you're using like you said, you're using current technology and tools to take your information, your education. Uh, and I appreciate that because it's very rare that I have people that are doing that. So,
Well, so I'm from a small town in Mississippi. I'm very aware of what I don't know,
okay.
and that is uh, an understanding. I also appreciate. I don't need to figure this all out, but if I listen to what Eric is saying, I'm going to learn his lessons, and so I don't have to plod that same ground. I'll come up with my own mistakes, but I
Right.
shouldn't make mistakes that others have already made that I can learn from. And I think the key is to find some people that you trust and that you can listen to, and that they will help give you suggestions along the way. And instead of scattering yourself across the board, try to focus on a few people that you're going to kind of latch onto and kind of follow their trail, if you will, of learning, education, and understanding. And you'll find yourself in a much better position.
Yeah, no, I like that. That's good. When you were, since you started the company in 2011, that means you had the entrepreneurial spirit inside of you, right? Did you go
Had a
ahead?
yard as a kid.
You said what?
I had probably the greatest yard business in Hattiesburg, Mississippi ever.
That's where I was headed with my question. See,
Mm.
you have been listening to me. You saw where I was. All right, go ahead. So you had a yard business in Mississippi.
Hey, you did a couple podcasts way back when, and you had people on that were doing lawn care for either national cemeteries
Hmm.
or national hospital systems. Man, I was like, I've got to do this. I've got to do it because I have a passion for it. I love it, but I just couldn't. It didn't work out you went through a lot of the hard steps you had to go through. It wasn't just go grab a lawnmower and you're good.
Right.
And so ultimately didn't do it. But man, I was close. I was like, Eric is my guy. He's telling me exactly what I want to
Yeah.
hear.
Chris
And so,
Dombach. Chris Dombach was one of the guys who does
yep.
cemeteries. Yeah.
Well, and what I learned, Eric, was a huge lesson. And as a kid, one day, so it rained.
Okay.
Rain is a problem in the yard business in South Mississippi when it pours. So I got rained out on a Friday. So you can't mow grass on Sunday. So I had to do all of Friday and Saturday all at once.
Okay.
So that meant I had to mow 20 yards in a day.
Mm,
Now, the flip side is I was looking at making $400 in a single day. So at age 15, back in the mid 80s, that's a lot of money.
oh yeah.
So I'm super motivated, but I came up with a way to do it because I started my yards at 4 in the morning before the sun came up. Nobody wants you cutting their grass at 4 in the morning, except for the businesses don't care because they're not there.
Okay.
So I calculated this whole route through the whole town that, I started at Ward's Hamburgers at 4 in the morning. And I mowed grass until about 8:30 that night. Dog tired, but man, I made $400. And I was like, I like this. And so I've always had it in me. I've always wanted to do it. I used to sell pine cones, you name it, I was doing it.
So the lesson there was batching.
Yep.
You start batching.
Very, I never thought of it that way.
That's
Yeah.
batching,
Yeah.
right? So then it allows you to continue to do more stuff, right? I taught my son this, and I said, look, um, regardless of how much we work today, how tired we are, tomorrow you'll recover.
Mhm.
You will recover tomorrow. I mean, so You don't I don't think about how difficult it is in this present time and how hard it is, and I'm tired and beat up, and I'm like, once you go to sleep and you rest, you'll wake up and you'll recover and you'll be fine.
I also tell my sons, you will never get as good a night's sleep as you get after a hard day's work.
You will never. No, no, no. That's a very true statement.
It is
You
so
sleep
true.
like a rock.
But I think that's also a challenge. I mean, like when I was growing up, I had no option.
Yeah, I didn't have an option either. I cut grass, but it wasn't for a business, but I cut it because that was part of your chores.
Yeah. Oh,
But
well,
then
I
it wasn't
definitely.
even it wasn't even just cutting our grass. It was cutting our grass, grandmother's grass, the lawn next door, which was not owned by us, but they said it beautifies our yard. So I'm like,
Oh,
well, why are
nice.
we
I
cutting
like
these?
your parents.
It's like, it's a vacant lot was next to
Okay.
our house, and the owners were some rich people, and they just kept it vacant. And they said, just go over there and cut that grass. It won't take you that long because it's growing up high, and we don't want snakes or rats or anything in the grass.
Well, I joke with my sons because it's like every weekend, it's a surprise that they have to cut the grass. And finally, I was like, hey, fellas, if there's any complaining, I love a good yard. So what I love more than a freshly cut yard is a yard that's freshly cut twice. So any complaining, y'all will just cross cut it and it'll be everybody wins.
So you just cross cut it. That's funny. I like that. We'll just make designs in the yard now. Make
Oh yeah.
squares. I like that. That's interesting. So this is great. I think again it humanizes people when you hear these stories because we will be able to identify with you. How do you get them to cut the yard in the age of like the iPad generation and the YouTube generation?
I practice a little old school parenting and uh, there is no wiggle room there.
Okay, there's not a vote. We don't. It's not up for vote. Okay,
There's no there's no voting. We are definitely a dictatorship.
okay. That's how I grew up. I
Yep.
like you said you grew up in Mississippi. What was the town?
Hattiesburg,
Hattiesburg. Okay.
so
Uh,
South Mississippi.
so did you pick what you were having for dinner?
Oh my gosh. We were talking about this the other night. My wife asked them what they wanted. I'm like, what do you no? This dinner. Mom's doing something to a chicken.
That's it, right? That's. I'm like, when did you pick what's for dinner?
That is
Like,
hilarious.
right? Think about that. It's funny you had this conversation tonight. I'm like, I don't know. Now kids
No,
name off.
I grew up, I worked in a steel yard and, in like ninth grade, I'm the highest educated person in the steel yard besides the owners. And so I learned a lot of hard work from a lot of hard people. And, that serves also as a motivation that, hey, you need to go out and get your education. You need to be able to go out and do something. And but there are a lot of people in this world that work really hard. And the steel yard in South Mississippi, I would argue, is one of those places. But I learned just a tremendous amount there in that steel yard.
I've never worked in a steel yard, but I did do pre-engineered metal buildings, and I've been to the factories where they made panels and they made the steel, and I got a chance to witness, and not only that, the conditions are not, uh, it's not climate controlled, right? Environment. It's the conditions are tough,
Nobody comes out and blows the whistle and says, okay, break time because it's hot. Y'all
right?
need to take.
No, no. So, yeah, what are some of the experiences that I mean, you talked about traveling to different countries. Is there any one significant experience that you can that's staying up in your mind when you were working at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce?
I think it was my first trip that I took was, well, I'll give you two examples, and they both deal with France. So my first trip overseas, I went with my boss to go to Paris, and it was my first opportunity to see how the chamber operates. I'd only been there for about 3 months, and we go to we're going, our meetings are at the palace there in Paris. And he said, listen, the way we do this is we look for up and comers. We, we develop a relationship with them. And so we're going to go have coffee today up in his office with this young guy named Macron. And he's pretty smart. And so fast forward a few years, and Macron's now the president of France. And
Mm,
that was a fascinating discussion. And
wow.
the other one was his president, when it was President Hollande. He came to the chamber. We were having a little round table, and I mentioned to my wife that, hey, I'm going in today. You know, it'll be interesting that President of France is coming in for a little round table. There's just going to be 10 of us. I said, but I'm most excited because Fred Smith is coming. And she said, well, who's Fred Smith? I'm like, Fred Smith's the CEO of FedEx. He was a Marine. He is a legend. What that man has done in his life is legendary. And I can't wait to meet him because I'd never met him. And so it was a real honor that day to, everybody else was with President Hollande. I went for Fred Smith.
Wow. That's great. That's a good story. No, I like that. Um, that's no, these are experiences that, like you said, you can't get back and you can't recreate.
Well, you know, Eric, one story I'll relate because I think it might be helpful for people as they venture into, either if they're leaving government or the military or just starting out and trying to figure things out. When my very first trip I took at the chamber, I was a pilot, so the chamber wanted me to go up to Pittsburgh, where we had a airplane for the executives, and it wanted me to go out and check it out. And so I was going from DC to Pittsburgh, and my boss called me up, and he said, and he could hear a train in the background. And he's like, Rob, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I'm on the train. I'm headed to I'm headed to Pittsburgh, like you told me. So, but the train doesn't go to Pittsburgh. I'm like, yeah, I know, but uh, I took the metro from the chamber to Union Station. I took a train from Union Station up to BWI, and then we'll get on the bus to get to the airport from the train station, and then we'll fly from there to Pittsburgh. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, because a flight from DCA was $800, but a flight from BWI was only $200. I'm saving $600.
Hmm.
He's like, don't you ever do that again, ever. He's like, your mind share and your time is way more valuable than $600. And I think that's the huge difference for folks when they move from the government side to the private sector side. The uh, most valuable skill set, the most valuable thing I have to bring is my mind. And if my mind share is spent on doing planes, trains, and automobiles to get to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that's probably not smart. And it's just a complete different mind shift from your time is not valuable. I mean, I know the military values time, but it's more like, well, we have 24 hours. We can do with you whatever we want today. Now it's a different mindset, and then valuing what you bring to the table. And then that creates a whole cascade of prioritization of your day. Like, you're spending 2 hours on this today.
Hmm.
You expect to get a return and a value out of that 2 hours. You know, that can come in many ways, shapes, or forms, but that is how you have to look at your day. And it's something that we have not looked at previously.
I thank you for that because I have some people on my team that they do the same thing. They say, "Oh, well, Eric, I'm spending it like I would do it at my house, at my home." And I say, "Yeah, but the amount of time and effort that you're wasting to save." We say, I heard a saying, it says, "Penny wise, pound foolish."
100%.
That's the saying.
And it is a tried and truism. And it's a different way that people need to start looking at the world in order to maximize their full potential.
I think it's really tough.
I
It's
don't say I do it well.
no. I agree. It's tough. I and that's why I personally now I continue to read and educate myself so I can be able to communicate that to my audience, right? A different way, or maybe say it differently, but it means the same thing so that it'll like click.
Mhm.
So that's what I'm always looking for. I'm always looking for that gem, that nugget that I can articulate in a manner that people get it and it resonates and they go, ah, I see what you mean now. That makes sense.
Well, I think, Eric, you could, I will make a hypothesis here that you can guarantee that you are, not for everybody every time, but for somebody, some segment each time,
Yes.
because we all hear it differently and we all are at different places with different needs. But as long as the message is getting out there, people are going to, there are going to be people to grab it. Like there might be one person that gets something out of this one. 9,000 won't, but that one person did, and tomorrow it'll be somebody different.
Right.
Because you've got a great platform and a great message.
Thank you. Thank you. What um what do we have to look forward from you in the coming years?
I truly feel like we're on the precipice of making a big impact. And I think that that's going to be a really exciting time for us. We've been able to just about double growth every year. This year will be a true test of that. But then we're really also setting the conditions for a tremendous 25. And we feel like if we're able to hit certain things in a certain way, no, we can't control everything, but we control what's in our own lane. I think it'll be a big few years for us in a way that, and I enjoy both sides of it. I enjoy delivering for the customer, making a bigger impact. I also enjoy hiring people and giving them opportunities for them to reach their full potential because we are going to push you here. And SteerBridge is not the place for people that want to just clock in. And we just hired a gentleman. He was a offensive lineman for the Baltimore Ravens.
Mm.
He is a large man. Uh, you know, but he is awesome. We're so excited to have him on the team. And I was explaining to him the culture because we're a lot of military folks. I'm like, hey, it's pretty rough and tumble, and this and that and whatnot. He looked at me. So keep in mind, he's like 300 pounds. Nicest guy in the world, super capable. He's doing some great work for us. But he's like, Rob, I played for Nick Saban. I can handle tough.
Oof.
And so I was like, okay, all right, we're
Oof.
good. We're good. And
Oof.
if we're able to collect those type people, people that are driven, they're passionate, they want to make an impact, they want to make a difference, both personally and professionally, uh, SteerBridge is a place for them. And we're trying to collect those type people and those in particular skill sets and areas. But if we can do that and do that well, there really is no limit. And I tell folks what I enjoy the most is my imagination is our only limiting factor here because we will go after things. I mean, we bid on $1 billion contract
Mm.
at 10 million in revenue that year. We went for and I still think that we had a
Proposal.
winning. Yeah. Oh, I think no doubt. But we couldn't overcome being the small guy.
Right.
But I think the proposal was we had the right partners and everything, and we had, but it was a little too revolutionary as opposed to evolutionary for the customer.
Okay.
And that's a good lesson learned. Don't try to sell them everything.
Mm.
They can't, they're not there.
Right. By the way, you look tall yourself.
Uh, 6'2".
Oh, there you go. So,
So
I mean,
you're
I'm
right.
looking, huh?
You're right now, aren't you?
No, not even close. I'm not even 6 foot. I'm still like 5'10", 5'11". I'm short, but that's okay. I don't mind. I got a big personality. How's that? I have a big personality.
Well, Jason Jason's manager is like 5'6".
Really? Oh, that has to be a great dynamic.
Hilarious.
You know, that has to be a great dynamic. I like that. That's a great dynamic there. When I'm looking at all your pictures online, I'm like, I see like these shots from here up, and I'm like, yeah, he's tall. He looks like a tall guy.
Yep.
But now, as we're closing out, I see that you have an internship program. Want to talk about that?
Sure, it's a great opportunity for us. I was a product of an internship back in when I was in college, and that internship set me off on a path that I could have never anticipated, hoped for. And so what we're trying to do is return that back to the next generation. And by bringing in some talented folks, the internship, in fact, we're hiring two of last year's interns. We've already hired them for next year. And they start with us in June. We actually just did a LinkedIn post. Both of them had one, Sarah Fry, she is a D1 swimmer, and then she just set a record for her team. And then Kyle Webster is the VMI lacrosse team captain, and they just hit a milestone this week too. So we put a nice post out on them. So we love our internship program. We think it's not only giving back a little bit, but it's also allows us an opportunity to look at some talent and see what it's like, and then show them. And I think that my daughter was a great example. So of course, I'm the owner. I get a few little perks. So my daughter was an intern. She's down at UNC in Chapel Hill. So
Okay.
she interned once, and she said, "Dad, that was awesome. I loved my experience with SteerBridge. I couldn't thank you enough. I realize now I never want to do what you do." And so I'm like, well, that's part of the internship.
That's
I'm
part
like,
of the
hey,
internship program.
yeah, you have to figure out it's a free ride to be able to see what a company like SteerBridge is like. Some people, it's all for you, but for the young interns, it's an opportunity to see. It's for a lot of them, it's their first foray into the professional world. We've also seen coming out of COVID, not so much last year, but the year before. I mean, that was a struggle for them, uh, as they had not been in an environment like that. And for a lot of them, it's their first professional environment. So it's a good place to come in, learn, make some mistakes, figure out what it's like to sit at a desk for 8 hours.
You've done a lot of things, Bob. As I go through your website, you actually appear before the House Subcommittee on Contracting Infrastructure.
Yeah, so that was a good opportunity to kind of talk about some of the issues and challenges that we face and some of the opportunities there are for them to correct some of the things that they do.
How do you think that they received it?
I think it was received very well. I think their ability to influence it and affect is very minimal.
Okay. No, I I understand. I always, like I said, we have a lot of great ideas, and
Mhm.
they just kind of somehow don't make it into a piece of paper or into the regs or to the contracts, and so.
Well, and I've been in DC for a while now, so I understand that you got to have a champion and you got to make it to where it is a positive outcome. And so for one of the things, I'll give you an example. One of the things I talked about was no double counting. So you cannot, if you're DoD, you can't count steer. So some companies have multiple designations,
Right. Women
DVOSB,
better on,
yeah,
right. Yeah.
all that.
Hope so.
So agencies will count. So every dollar they can count it up to like 4 or 5 times.
Right.
And that's not the intent of the rule
Right.
and the law. But who's motivated to change that?
Yeah.
Because if the administration changes it, all of a sudden their numbers take a nosedive and it looks like they're not producing for
Right.
small businesses. And so nobody wants to be the one to make the change.
Right.
I get it, but it's not going to stop me from saying they shouldn't. I talked about the self-certification of SDVOSBs, which is just nonsense in my mind. And we've lost some things to some people. There's no way they could certify it, and there was a reason why they weren't certifying.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Well, Rob, why don't you tell the people Where do you think they can find you? Where would you like to be contacted at after listening to this episode?
Sure. So I'm more than happy to connect with anybody that is looking for either some specific help, some looking to partner, looking to do whatever. I'm open for anything that folks could need some help with. LinkedIn is the easiest way to grab me. I'm rob@steerbridge.com, so it's not a very complicated email address either, but happy to connect with anybody and provide any sort of assistance that I can, whether it's just talking about how I got to where we are or some of the hard lessons I've learned, or really anything in between.
And then tell them again, how can someone listening to this um, just give them some parting words? How about that? We'll close out some parting words.
So what I would say is that a couple things. Number one, as you're starting out, you have to really get yourself in a spot where you are comfortable being uncomfortable. Because as you're starting out, you haven't done this before. You haven't done it personally, but you're also selling something that has never been done before. So when you get your first contract, somebody is betting that you will do everything that you promised them that you will do. And so that can be an uncomfortable because you don't have any past performance to point to. So I'd say being comfortable, being uncomfortable. I'd also say that you have to understand how to calculate risks in order to take risks. So don't put yourself, don't put your family, don't put your livelihood all on the table in an all or nothing, but understand how to calculate those risks. And I think that is a huge deal. And that's, something I'm happy to help people with, but to understand how those risks need to be calculated in order for you to take the risk. And then thirdly, what I would say is don't be afraid. The way I looked at it was there are a lot of people out there that are super successful, and there's no reason why I couldn't join them and be one of them. And so the self-doubt, just put that in the corner, let it motivate you, but don't let it stop you from doing something and achieving your own personal greatness, if you will, because everybody's got it in them. If they're just thinking about this, I would say nurture that and be able to develop it and really take off.
Rob, thank you so much. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you giving back. I appreciate you coming on and agreeing to this. I am I'm happy because I like the stories of newcomers into the space. You have a different perspective, right? You are living and breathing in the now and what's happening now, not what happened, back in the 2000s. So that's refreshing to hear. And I love that you're standing up and advocating for small businesses and programs that are going to create more opportunities for folks. So we appreciate that. Appreciate your service, and we appreciate you also encouraging veterans, because when I'm out here and I'm traveling these roads and people ask me, they have the imposter syndrome, they have the fear, they have the doubt, right? And every book that I've ever read says that we all have the same thing. So if
Well, so Eric, thank you very much. And thank you for being part of what got me here today and part of what's going to propel us in the future. Please, if we can be helpful here at SteerBridge or me personally, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we really appreciate you giving us the opportunity to really publicly say thank you for all that you do for the community, all that you did for us personally. And I wish you all the best of luck as you kind of continue the march.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.